Welcome back to Timeless Wisdom, where we explore ancient wisdom for modern living. And today we're going to be talking about corruption and what it means to be a good person and live a good life. You've brought some really intriguing sources, especially from an Islamic perspective. And I think this is going to be really insightful. We're going to be looking at Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 27 from the Quran. So what struck you about this verse when you first read it?
Well, I think what's fascinating is how this verse connects corruption with the idea of being a loser. It really makes you think about what does it mean to be a loser in this context, and how does that resonate with what we know today about human behavior and well-being?
It's like this ancient wisdom is speaking directly to us across the centuries. The verse tells us that those who break covenants, sever ties, spread corruption. They are the losers. So let's unpack this a little bit. We often think of corruption in a very material sense, like bribery or fraud. How does the Quran define corruption?
Well, the source emphasizes that Allah guides all of creation for a specific purpose. Everything operates in harmony, from the sun and the moon to the stars in the sky. But humans, we have this unique gift of free will, the power to choose our path. And I think that's where things get interesting, because this freedom can lead us to righteousness or toward corruption, depending on how we use it.
Free will is such a complex concept, and it's something that psychology grapples with constantly. Does the Quran's perspective on free will align with any particular psychological schools of thought?
I think it does. This idea of choosing our path and facing the consequences aligns with the school of existential psychology. Thinkers like Viktor Frankl emphasize personal responsibility, and the search for meaning. Frankl actually believed that even in the face of suffering, we have the freedom to choose our response and find meaning in our experiences. And this really resonates with the Quran's message that our choices have consequences and we are accountable for them.
That's a powerful connection between ancient wisdom and modern psychology. So in the context of this free will, how does the Quran define corruption?
The source describes corruption as swapping the do's and don'ts, disrupting the natural balance of things. Just like a society needs laws, in order to function, our individual lives need structure, boundaries, and social contracts to thrive. And when we disregard these principles, that's when we see chaos and conflict arise.
This reminds me of psychological research on instant gratification. The dishonest merchant who prioritizes short-term profit over long-term societal trust. I think that embodies this perfectly. It's fascinating how this ancient wisdom aligns with contemporary findings.
Absolutely. And the Quran doesn't just stop at individual actions. It highlights how corruption manifests on a larger scale through things like cronyism and environmental destruction.
Let's delve into those examples. What's the psychological impact of cronyism where incompetent individuals are placed in positions of authority?
Well, studies by Dr. Margaret Heffernan show that cronyism leads to something called learned helplessness in organizations. Competent people stop trying because they see unfairness being rewarded, and this destroys motivation and innovation, ultimately harming the entire group. And this aligns with the Quran's warnings against placing unqualified individuals in positions of power, as it inevitably leads to societal harm.
And what about the psychological effects of environmental destruction? We see it happening all around us, sadly.
The psychological impacts of environmental degradation are profound. Studies have shown that living in polluted environments and witnessing the destruction of nature can contribute to increased stress, anxiety, even depression. It erodes our sense of belonging and connection to the natural world, which is crucial for well-being. The Quran emphasizes the importance of environmental stewardship, recognizing the interconnectedness of all creation and the responsibility humans have to protect that delicate balance of nature.
Right, it's like our disregard for the environment is a form of corruption in itself. It's interesting how both cronyism and this environmental damage, as highlighted in the Quran, have these far-reaching consequences that really do impact us on a very personal level.
Exactly. And the Quran then presents a powerful solution to this problem of corruption. Islam. It offers a system rooted in divine guidance, promoting fairness and balance, as opposed to this unchecked greed and desire.
So how does Islam as a system address this?
Islam offers a holistic framework for individual and societal well-being. The Quran provides detailed guidance on personal conduct, social interactions, and even environmental stewardship. It's a blueprint for living in harmony with oneself, with others, and with the natural world.
It sounds like an antidote to the corruption that the source warns us about. Earlier, we talked about corruption leading to being a loser.
Right.
What does that mean for an individual?
The Quran speaks about two lives, the temporary worldly life and the eternal life in the hereafter. And it argues that those who prioritize worldly gains and fleeting pleasures over their spiritual well-being, they are the true losers.
That's a profound thought. It seems to connect with the psychological concept of aligning our actions with our values for a sense of purpose and fulfillment. If we're constantly chasing material things, are we neglecting a deeper, more meaningful part of ourselves?
Absolutely. The Quran reminds us of the day of judgment, a day when our actions will be weighed against a higher standard. And this prompts us to examine our priorities and consider the true value of our actions.
It's like that saying, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? It's really about understanding that our choices contribute to either a more just and harmonious world or one riddled with corruption. It's a weighty responsibility.
But it's also empowering. The Quran reminds us that we have agency. We can choose to be a force for good in the world, and by aligning our actions with divine guidance, we can create a life of balance, purpose, and true success.
So circling back to that powerful opening verse, those who break covenants, sever ties, and spread corruption are the losers. What does losing really mean in light of all we've discussed?
The Quran says this loss isn't just about material things, it's about losing oneself. It's about succumbing to instant gratification and forfeiting the opportunity for a deeper connection with Allah and with our true nature.
And this loss, as the Quran points out, is accompanied by immense regret.
Yes. The Quran describes those who have led a life of corruption, wishing they were mere dust upon witnessing the day of judgment. It's a reminder of the gravity of our choices and the importance of living in alignment with our values and with divine guidance.
So how can we as individuals strive to avoid this loss and regret? What practical steps can we take to cultivate a life of meaning, purpose, and lasting fulfillment?
The Quran suggests a shift in perspective. Instead of being consumed by the material world, it encourages us to prioritize our spiritual growth, seek knowledge and understanding of Islamic teachings, and make a conscious effort to align your actions with those teachings.
It's about remembering that our time in this world is finite, and our actions have consequences that extend far beyond our immediate gratification. We should invest in what truly matters, what brings us closer to Allah, and a state of lasting peace and contentment.
Yes, true success lies not in accumulating wealth or status, but in cultivating a pure heart, an enlightened mind, and a soul connected to its source.
So it's not just about avoiding corruption in the external world. It's about purifying ourselves from within and striving for that inner harmony that then influences our interactions with others and the world around us.
Precisely. This, according to the Quran, is the path to true fulfillment, both in this life and in the hereafter.
This has been such an insightful look at corruption from an Islamic perspective. We've delved into its societal, its psychological, and its spiritual dimensions. But before we wrap up, you mentioned something earlier about investing in our children's faith.
Oh.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, the Quran highlights a crucial point. We often pour so much effort into our children's worldly success, their education, their careers, but sometimes we neglect their spiritual understanding, their connection with Allah, and true success encompasses both worldly and spiritual well-being. Neglecting one aspect can lead to imbalance and incompleteness.
It's about raising a generation that's not only equipped to thrive in the material world, but also grounded in their faith values and sense of purpose. A generation that's capable of achieving success, but also contributing to a more just and harmonious world. Have you seen any real-life examples of this integrated approach to success?
Oh, absolutely. I recently heard about this young entrepreneur who built a successful tech startup while staying firmly rooted in his Islamic principles. He incorporated ethical business practices, prioritized fair treatment of his employees, and even dedicated a portion of his profits to charitable causes. He's a living example of how worldly success and spiritual grounding can go hand in hand, creating a ripple effect of positive change.
That's really inspiring. It shows that the Quran's teachings are applicable even in today's fast-paced, technology-driven world.
Exactly. The principles of honesty, integrity, compassion, justice, these are timeless and universal. By instilling these values in our children, we empower them to navigate the complexities of life with a moral compass.
This has been such a powerful and thought-provoking conversation. We've explored the concept of corruption from so many different angles and uncovered the timeless wisdom that the Quran offers. As we wrap up, what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with today?
I think the most important takeaway is that corruption, as defined in the Quran, is a force that impacts every aspect of our lives, our well-being, our relationships, our societies, even our planet. But we have the power to choose a different path, a path guided by divine wisdom and the principles of justice, fairness, and balance.
And that choice ultimately determines whether we become winners or losers in the grand scheme of things. By aligning ourselves with the teachings of Islam, we can avoid those pitfalls of corruption and really create a world that is more just compassionate and harmonious.
Absolutely. Remember, the Quran's wisdom is timeless. Apply it today.
And if you're interested in learning more about applying Islamic principles to modern life, I highly recommend checking out our channel, The Broke Entrepreneur. we delve into the practical aspects living a faith-based life in today's world. And with that, we conclude our deep dive into the concept of corruption from an Islamic perspective. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery.